Welcome to the World Economic Forum in Davos for our debate on fake news. It is one of the buzzwords of our time because it is such a significant phenomenon of the internet age. Let me tell you who's on our panel. So, Jimmy Wales, co-founder of Wikipedia, who's on a mission to fight fake news with the launch of Wiki Tribune. Joseph Kahn is managing editor of the New York Times that's seen its circulation shoot up. It was founded in 1851 and has received more than 120 Pulitzer Prizes for its journalism. Annabelle Keener, deputy editor-in-chief of RT, the Kremlin-backed television network, formerly known as Russia Today, and Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, chairman of the Pakistan People's Party. He's the son of the former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, assassinated 10 years ago. Welcome to our panel, and of course to you watching and listening around the world on TV, radio, and online. Now, you know, first I asked our colleagues on the BBC's technology programme, Click, to take a look at what fake news is and how it's becoming more and more sophisticated.
The fake news. Fake news. Fake news. This is fake news.
A little bit of fake news.
Fake news. You are fake news.
Fake news. Everyone's using the term these days. And with good reason. While President Trump may have helped put the term in the dictionary, the rest of the world has been struggling to separate fact from fiction. That was fake.
The headline was, "This is how Islamic society look like, and we are heading to this."
That was fake.
The most grotesque stomach-churning videos.
That's fake too. The problem is, it now seems to mean everything from actual lies to just something you don't agree with. So just how do we sort fact from fiction, opinion from satire, and from highly skewed and misleading headlines? Tech giants like Facebook, Twitter and Google have spent a year wrestling with the problem. But in a world driven by likes, clicks and attention, do they have what it takes to fight the fakes? It could be that one reason it's so hard to stop this stuff is that there's big money to be made in creating it.
This was for a couple of years that I did it. I was so much younger. A lot of fake news that's being written is just by regular people that are sitting down on their computers that have learned this formula: scandalous title plus false information equals profit. Once upon a time, even a 13-year-old could do this.
One thing is certain: fake news is a lot easier to make and share than it is to find and debunk.
And recognising fake news could be about to get even harder. New technology could soon make us question not just what we read, but everything we see and hear.
And you can't get charged more just for being a woman.
From stealing our faces to mimicking our voices.
I am not a robot. My intonation is always different.
What's real has never been so unclear. Fact-checking organisations and technologists are working to identify and flag fake news. Researchers and politicians are starting to investigate its impact, and we're all starting to become more aware of the power it can have.
Russia is seeking to weaponize information, deploying its state-run media organisations to plant fake stories and photoshopped images in an attempt to sow discord in the West and undermine our institutions.
Is it too little, too late? Or is this just the start of a high-tech fake news arms race?
Quick question to all of you. How useful a term is fake news? Joe Kahn.
Well, it's a useful term in the sense, as your clip points out, the phenomenon of maliciously created false information for political or economic purposes is an ongoing and very serious threat when news and information is distributed so widely on technology platforms. I'd say at the moment there's more awareness of the need to combat actual fake news.
We'll come to that in a moment, but just a quick rapid fire here. Bilawal. Is it a useful term, fake news, catch-all phrase?
I'm not so sure, Zainab, because I feel that obviously misinformation, propaganda, disinformation have been long-standing components of information warfare. Fake news has recently gained prominence vis-a-vis the American election, but as we saw in that clip, when politicians use it as a catch-all phrase to cover political spin, stuff they don't like, then it gets murky. So I think there is a debate to be had about how useful the term fake news is.
Annabelle Kino?
I think the term is absolutely toxic because it muddles the debate and just the public discourse about accuracy and factuality in information. It is we see it weaponized by public figures, but also by media organizations as a way to silence dissenting voices, as a way to avoid answering to any kind of criticism. And at the very end, it is harmful to the actual problem that we're trying to solve here.
Okay, Jimmy Wells, I mean, we put fabricated evidence into fake news and news that simply people don't like.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's a problem, and I'm surprised. I agree with Annabelle, except the one thing I would add to that is we should distinguish between fake news generated by teenagers and things like that, and there are actually better terms for propaganda, for something like RT, and muddling those two together is really a huge mistake.
All right. Joe Kahn from the New York Times, you were the recipient of a fake news award, a newspaper award from the White House. And, being treated as a bit of a joke and people are making, playing with it and so on. Is it a joke?
Well, that's President Trump's definition of fake news is the real problem with fake news, which is that his accusation of fake news is fundamentally fake. The problem with fake news is not journalism, which sometimes makes errors in the process of reporting and writing, and then promptly corrects itself. Good journalistic organizations own up to their errors. Every single one of the awards that the president gave out to fake news media were media organizations that made factual errors and corrected them. That, to me, is the definition of good journalistic practice. Calling it fake news is an all-purpose smear, which has made the term, as people said in the clip, a weaponized term to try to...
But you're wearing as a bit of badge of honor, are you? I got a fake news award from the White House.
Why not?
Okay.
I wish we had more than one, quite
Below El Buto. I mean, that's one side of fake news, but actually in your part of the world, when fake news is disseminated on WhatsApp or whatever medium, it can have actually rather dangerous consequences, can't it?
I think that it can have dangerous consequences everywhere. I think what we were referring to with President Trump is particularly concerning and dangerous, not because it's funny he's handing out fake news report, and you're absolutely correct, they've all been corrected. The point is to have the leader of a democratic country demonizing the press in such a way is what concerns me. Coming from a fragile democracy, from a political party in a country who's fought for Pakistan to be a democracy, I'm concerned both with the use by politicians of this term to sort of demonize the press, and on the other side...
Does that go on in Pakistan then? I mean, who's behind fake news in Pakistan?
We started well before Trump. I won't take the politician's name. But attacking and demonizing the media, repeatedly repeating false fiction on a mass scale, that's sort of...
And who else is behind it in Pakistan?
Okay, so I think that, as with everywhere else, there's no concrete way to answer that question. Yes, politicians are behind it. News media in my country and in other parts of the developing world are far more commercialized, owned by big business interests who aren't limited in the way it is in the UK, that you can't have a television station and a newspaper. They push out their commercial interests. So non-traditional platforms can actually be a source of rather credible news.
So a lot of actors involved there.
Yeah.
Jimmy Wells, Wikipedia is part of the digital explosion, of course, but you are, if I could sort of put it delicately, also part of the kind of fake news problem, because there are a lot of inaccuracies, aren't there? There are a lot of inaccuracies on Wikipedia.
Well, of course, there are a lot of inaccuracies in everything, but the thing about Wikipedia is that we are diligently and passionately committed to getting it right. And so we have very strong standards about reliable sources. We have a very open policy of correcting any mistakes that come into us. Of course, doing serious research, doing serious journalism inherently involves making mistakes from time to time. But the key is you just have to try to get it right, and I think that's fundamental. And this is very different.
There's no malicious or malevolent intent behind that inaccuracy.
I think that's really important, yeah. And also, you know, a lot of the fake news problem, fake news that gets circulated on social media and so forth, doesn't make it into Wikipedia because the Wikipedia community are very sophisticated about evaluating sources. And so they would see fake news from teenagers in Macedonia or whatever the classic example is, and they would recognize immediately, that's not a real newspaper, I've never heard of that. They check around, and it doesn't make it into Wikipedia.
Annabelle Kino, we heard Theresa May in our short film there accusing Russia of weaponizing information. And as you know, there are so many accusations against RT from various sources. I know you'll say it's not the case, but you know, NATO, President Emmanuel Macron of France, Theresa May, the German government, the American government, they all say Russia as a state actor is a perpetrator of fake news and it uses stations such as RT.
Well, those accusations, and I'm going to speak specifically about RT because a lot of them are very directly addressed to us. Those accusations are false. They're demonstrably false. I'm glad that you brought up the statements by President Macron. RT has actually been a target of false information spread about it. Throughout the campaign, the presidential campaign.
So what, you're accusing President Macron of spreading false information about RT?
His campaign repeatedly has made claims that RT has spread false stories about their candidate. However, throughout the duration of the campaign or thereafter, they have failed to provide a single example of such a news story. Now,
all right, but you know, there is. I know you will say they're all false, but they come from so many, you know, quarters. NATO, Russia. NATO says it's been dealing with a significant increase in Russian propaganda and disinformation since 2014. Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook has denounced Russia's fake news agency. I could really go on and on and on.
And this is part of the problem, that we're conflating, you know, terms like propaganda, misinformation, disinformation are notably much more subjective and vague than something like fake news. And they are used to dismiss and discredit any kind of dissenting, any kind of inconvenient opinion or even just fact. Seat number 93, but when the presidential candidate or his team repeatedly and without evidence presents these kinds of accusations of fake news, and you know, all the media in the U.S. and really the mainstream media in the West is very happy to point to any kind of statement.
The intelligence agencies of Germany and France, all these countries have provided
We're
the evidence.
scrutinizing differently statements by President Trump, and we're not scrutinizing accusations of fake news from President Macron at all. In fact, there has been a single mainstream media outlet to call out, to question the Macron campaign, and that has been Reuters, and they did not receive a single example of a false story RT has provided.
Jimmy Wales, are you satisfied with what you just heard? That complete and utter denial and rejection there.
I mean, if you just, the evidence is from so many different places. So Columbia Journalism School had a team of graduate students at the project RT Watch, and they found multiple examples of completely misrepresentation, false stories, fake experts, outright, lies, and it's overwhelming. And so that's not even an open question. And also, I think it's really important to understand that serious people don't say, fake news is news I disagree with. And so it's not about silencing dissenting views. You don't see the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, when they disagree on an issue, calling each other fake news. It's about basic journalistic standards.
Joe wants to come in here. Joe Kahn.
I was going to say, Zaina, that I think Anna's correct, and Jimmy mentioned this earlier on one point. There is a semantic distinction between propaganda or news with spin that is put out there by a state or by a news organization.
Fake news
for
is
some
news
kind
I disagree
of
with.
political purpose or effect, which has a basis in fact.
You don't see the Wall Street Journal and the New York
purpose
Times when they
is to
disagree on
spin
an
the
issue calling
facts for the purpose of
Is
sort
that the
of
case,
achieving
though? I mean, President Emmanuel Macron said that, that there were wild accusations about him having secret bank accounts in the Caribbean, and that he was secretly a homosexual and that kind of thing. There's no basis in truth in that, he
There's
said.
a spectrum between propaganda and spin and totally false, maliciously created fake
But that's
news.
what he's saying went on in his case.
Yes.
And accusing
So
RT
you can
as
dispute
being one of
where
those.
on the spectrum that falls.
Neither of those stories ever appeared on RT.
No, it was Russian television, but he did accuse... Well, I'll tell you exactly what he said, OK, just to get this out there. Emmanuel Macron said, Russia Today, he also mentioned the Sputnik website, have been agents of influence which on several occasions spread counter-truths about me personally and my campaign. They behaved like agents of influence and false propaganda. That's what he said. Take it up with him.
Could I just
We've tried. We have tried
Could I just
multiple
come to
times.
Russia Today's defense for a second? Absolutely, politicians, media outlets, partisan media outlets push out agendas, etc. But let's not forget that WMDs in Iraq was also fake news. Theresa May says on that clip that Russian Today is a state...
Weaponizing information.
Weaponizing information, fair enough. But they're also saying, she's saying that, through state-sponsored media. We're sitting on a BBC platform that's state-sponsored in the UK. We have to be able to sort of see that when we're looking at it from their point of view, we don't seem to notice our own flaws and weaknesses in the Western setup either.
Nice try there, Bilawal Bhutto. However, I have to say...
The New York Times,
no, I have to
other
say,
international
well, I can only tell you
the
what...
BBC, how do you report WMDs in Iraq?
Yeah, but when we get it wrong, we say that we got something wrong.
Invasion in Iraq.
So does RT.
But there's no equivalence argument. The BBC, yes, you say RT is just a national broadcaster, just like the BBC is. BBC is subjected to independent, a regulator, Ofcom,
as is RT,
which is nothing to do with the government. And the BBC regularly makes reports and investigations which criticise the government. Do you do that on RT?
We absolutely do that on RT. We are regulated actually by Ofcom as well, all of our programming. Just as Joe was describing the process of
multiple times by Ofcom.
Less than the BBC and never fined like the BBC has. So this is the problem. We're moving the goalposts. We're constantly moving the goalposts. And this is the problem, that errors that RT has made, and of course we've made errors in our reporting, and we've addressed them, we've corrected, we've issued clarifications we've informed our audience. But when it comes to RT or other alternative voices, legitimate alternative voices in the news media, those kinds of accusations become a way to summarily misrepresent the nature of what we do. Whereas for others, let's say the peers, New York Times peers in the mainstream